Hello, and welcome to the Teacher Academy with Mr. B. As you may have guessed, I'm Mr. B. Now, I created this channel with the hopes of helping teachers out there just like yourself and help you guys grow and develop within your own career fields. And I'm going to use essentially strategies, techniques, and practices that I myself use and found successful in the classroom. I want to share them with you in hopes that they benefit both you and your students. So for today's episode, we're going to look at the one single acronym that matters the most and that you should be implementing every day as a teacher. So let's get started and take a seat because class is in session. Now, I want to begin by recognizing the crazy amount of just acronyms and overall information that gets thrown at teachers. And trust me, I know how overwhelming that can be. However, the acronym that I'm going to teach you really narrows down the most important qualities that teachers need to embrace in order to get their careers off to a strong start. And it really will work with any type of teaching style, curriculum, or school setting. It's an acronym that I actually began myself, and I have used ever since my first year of teaching and even use it now to this day. And it's called REC. No, not like a car crash. I'm talking REC. And it stands for relationships, expectations, and consistency. Think of it as the REC rules for success. Now let's look at the R, relationships. More specifically, I'm referring to the relationships with the types of stakeholders that you'll be interacting with on a fairly daily basis. And for teachers, that breaks down into three major stakeholders: students, parents, and coworkers. Now, I think most teachers realize that it's important to build relationships with their students. But I think that especially if you're starting out, you may not realize all the benefits that come with that. For one, you're going to have a much better understanding of their learning styles and their specific instructional needs. You're also going to have a better understanding of what does or maybe does not motivate those students, and just in general, how to engage them throughout the course of your instruction. At the end of the day, students want to learn from teachers that show they care for them, and you do that through relationships. It's really the difference between being a transformational teacher versus just being a transactional one. It's also very important to build relationships with the parents of your students. And I know that as new teachers, this was very much the case for me, it can be a little bit hard to come out of your shell, right? And that's a bit of a comfort zone thing where there might be some apprehension, maybe some nerves when it comes to interacting with parents. But establishing positive connections with the parents can have major classroom payoffs. Now, I think a lot of newer teachers especially, when they think about the benefits of having parent support in the classroom, they think about things like having a parent that's willing to volunteer supplies or willing to volunteer time in the room, or go on field trips as a chaperone, which is great. And those are, in fact, things that will definitely benefit from you building relationships with them. But the biggest benefit that you can get by having a strong relationship with parents is their support for you and their respect for you as a professional. The fact is that you know more about their child's academic needs than they do, because you spend more time with the kids in the room and you see the kids learning every single day. And that means that there's going to be times where you need to have tough conversations about what is best for their child's needs. And when that happens, you want to have the parent to support you and respect your professional advice, because your professional advice is very important in these situations, right? Like, for example, if you have to identify a student as needing a 504 plan or an IEP, or you have to talk about a student's struggles in a certain subject, having the parents' support and having a relationship with them is going to increase the probability that when you have these tough conversations, they not just respect and value your opinion, they're going to actually act on what you recommend. It's very important that you don't forget about your coworkers as well. And I think that, again, this might be something that newer teachers don't quite fully appreciate when they first come in. Your coworkers are an excellent source of information and for support in the classroom. Your administrators and your academic coaches, they're essentially there to provide you with free professional development. You don't have to pay a penny for it, it's already there. Now, one thing they have to remember, however, is that it's a two-way street, and they're going to want to work with you as long as you're willing to work with them. No one is going to want to work with someone who gets defensive over new ideas or is shut off from collaboration. At the end of the day, there might be things that are missing in your classroom or things or areas where you're looking to improve. And the best source for fixing those things might already be at your school in your coworkers. It's time to switch gears and talk about expectations. I don't think that a lot of teachers fully realize just how much your expectations are a strong reflection of your mindset as a teacher. Simply put, teachers that maintain strong expectations for their students are teachers that really refuse to give up on their students. Now, I have taught in very low-income Title I schools where most of my students came to me very low, especially when it came to assessment scores. Unfortunately, while I taught there, I encountered some teachers that had a bit of a defeatist mindset. Now, to be clear, I had some amazing teachers that I also worked with that this did not apply to at all. However, the ones that had the defeatist mindsets, they essentially chose not to hold students to high expectations because they felt it was somehow pointless. Like, why put these students to high academic standards when they come in with such low academic performance? I realized they probably felt that way because they thought they were being realistic. But the real reality is that all students are capable of learning, and high expectations is the catalyst for driving that learning. Yes, your students will fall short, they will fail, and that's okay. But don't lower your expectations. Rather, adjust the support you provide to help them reach those expectations. Now, suffice it to say that the student performance in my classroom, as well as in the classrooms of those teachers who maintained the high expectations for their students, was very different from the ones who didn't. At the end of the day, students are capable of learning, and all of them are capable of achieving amazing things. But in order for them to get there, they have to believe that they can get there. And in order for them to believe in themselves, you have to believe in them. And there is no greater way to show your students that you believe in them than to hold them to high expectations. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about consistency. Consistency is the foundation of building strong habits that lead to successful practice. And the way to establish really good consistency is through routines. Now, I want you to do me a favor. Think about a successful teacher at your school, someone who consistently stands out as being a top performer. I'm willing to bet anything that that teacher that you're thinking about has amazing routines in their classroom. And this includes routines for how students enter the room, leave the room, engage with the lesson, and how their behavior is managed. That teacher probably also has very good routines outside the classroom, including how they analyze data, how they lesson plan, or just how they use their planning time in general. They have a consistent routine set up to be successful in all those facets. Consistency is really a critical component of success, and it's not a product of coincidence. Reflect and evaluate now on your own practices. Are they consistent? Do you have strong routines for them? Ultimately, humans are creatures of habit, and those habits define much of what makes or doesn't make us successful. And in order to build strong habits, especially in the classroom, you must use consistency through strong routines, both for your students and for yourself. Well, looks like that's it for today's lesson. Don't worry, I know that I only really introduced the acronym today. In future videos, I will take a further dive into specific practices and strategies that support each aspect and element of this acronym. For now, focus on ensuring that you're doing your best to build relationships with the stakeholders you interact with most frequently, to set high expectations for yourself and for your students, and to establish consistent routines in your classroom and in your personal life. Now, before you leave class, if you enjoyed the content of this video, please like and subscribe so that we can reach as many teachers as possible. And hopefully this video can be beneficial to them and their students as well. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.